So the Democrats are better than the Republicans, and you want to see why? 125 Democrats say military aid to Israel shouldn't depend on human rights record. Hey, let's stop with the purity tests. This is a real story. In response to growing calls for making U.S. aid to the Netanyahu government conditional on Israeli adherence to human rights laws, 330 members of the U.S. House of Representatives signed a letter insisting that $3.8 billion in annual military aid the United States provides Israel remain unconditional. Things that are unconditional, aid to Israel, and not giving a fuck about you. Those are things that are unconditional. Here we go. The letter was signed by virtually all of the Republicans and over half of the Democrats. Bipartisanship, baby! The lawmakers' overwhelming bipartisan opposition to conditioning aid is not a product of political pressures coming from their constituents. Polls show that barely 1/3 of U.S. voters and barely 1/10 of Democrats oppose such conditions on foreign aid, meaning they support putting conditions on the foreign aid. That's what that means. That's written pretty awkwardly, but that's what that means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So polls show that barely 1/3 of voters and 1/10. So most people want to put conditions on the aid.
Yes. Yeah, it is a weird.
That is such a weird.
It's a little
backwards, inside out way to write that. Since the Biden administration is already firmly committed to continuing unconditional military aid to Israel's right-wing government, the letter appears to be a reaction to the recent introduction of a bill. That bill would prohibit U.S.-provided arms and security assistance from being used in violations of international humanitarian law, such as the military detention and abuse of children, the demolition of homes, illegal confiscation of Palestinian property, or the annexation of occupied land. Hey, if we could do it, why can't they? That's what I say. So that's what. This is what Israel does. All those things to Palestine, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the Palestinians, they do all those things. The military detains and abuses children. They demolish their homes. They illegally confiscate their property, and they illegally annex occupied land. So they're trying to say, hey, if you want the United States to keep giving you aid, you have to start treating those people like human beings and stop doing that stuff. And that's not going to happen. That bill's not going to pass. The lawmakers' letter insisted that adding conditions such as those would somehow be detrimental to Israel's ability to defend itself, indicating a belief that such illegal activities constitute legitimate self-defense. So they're saying, well, if we got rid of that, we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves. You have to do war crimes to defend yourself? That doesn't seem right. They got to do war crimes to defend themselves from Palestinian kids throwing rocks.
Yeah,
The message in the letter is clear. Human rights and international law should not be considered in allocating U.S. military aid. Our bomb love, unconditional. Unconditional love. Still think we're the good guys, do you? Still think we're the good guys? Ironically, a number of the signatories are members of the Progressive Caucus and received endorsements from progressive groups like Move On, Peace Action, and Progressive Democrats of America. There is no left in America, ladies and gentlemen. And if you didn't learn that through Force the Vote like I did, maybe shit like this will prove it to you. Maybe the Sunshine Group going on. Maybe, how about the head of the Justice Democrats going on CNN arguing for Neera Tanden to be in government? Maybe that tells you there's no fucking left in America? How about this? How about this? There are calls for these groups to deny them endorsements in 2022 unless they are willing to renounce their signatures, noting how proponents of unconditional military aid to human rights abusers in Latin America and elsewhere in previous decades have been denied such support. It raises the question as to why such criteria should be lowered when the victims are Palestinians. Indeed, unless the Democrats who signed this letter are held accountable, there will be little incentive to end U.S. military aid to Israel and other human rights abusers. Vote blue! You're not in a cult if you vote for the Democrats and think you're doing good. Oh, there's huge differences between the Democrats and Republicans. I love people who fucking take time out of doing a news report to go, and I'm not saying the Democrats and Republicans are the same. Obviously, they're not. Why would you waste your fucking breath? I'm not saying Stalin and Hitler are the same. There's obviously difference between Stalin and Hitler. Like Hitler gives people health care. Like, what the fuck? You know what a jackass you sound like when you stop your news show to go, and I'm not saying the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. What a fucking waste of space you are. What a fucking puke. I'm not saying it. Shut up. I'm not saying the guy who's currently oppressing you and fucking everything and setting the world on fire isn't as bad as the other guy. You know, the people denying you a living wage and health care and a UBI and rent right now, they're better than the other guy. I want to take time out of my news report to say that. Why? Because you're some kind of fucking mental. That's why. Because you have a broken brain. You've been beaten down by the system. You don't have enough inner fortitude to stand up against that shit. You have to constantly keep saying stupid shit like that. Hey, the Democrats technically aren't as murderous maniacs. It's like David Frum saying Tucker Carlson's support of the Iraq War was worse than his support of the Iraq War. The Democrats just added $20 billion onto the defense budget. Not $20 billion in student debt relief. They didn't end homelessness, which you can end homelessness for $20 billion. They could have did that. They decided to give it to Raytheon. They're much better than Donald Trump. I think you should take time out of your news report to let people know just how much better Joe Biden is than Donald Trump. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're part of the problem. And I'm not saying that Democrats and Republicans are the same. Oh, boy, what a difference. Whoa! People, you should be telling people to get in the goddamn streets. You fucking losers. You go along wimps. You should be going, yeah, Joe Biden is not as bad as Donald Trump. You should still get in the streets and start a revolution because these people are rapacious oligarchs and they won't give you the basics. They won't give you health care in a pandemic. They won't give you a UBI when they shut your business down. They won't give you a living wage.
Yeah,
that's what you should be. Go ahead, Ron.
I was just going to say, I mean, imagine if that was the letter that they were all lockstep together on as far as what is unconditional. Like, it is unconditional that everybody has health care. It is unconditional that everybody has the right to an education. It is unconditional that everybody has the right to a living wage. I mean, there's a lot of things you should be unconditional on, and they, man, what a shitty thing they chose.
And they're unconditional on military aid to an oppressive, war criming government. That's what they're in favor of no conditions on a maniac like Benjamin Netanyahu shooting in broad daylight children. No problem with that.
It really is remarkable. I mean, you couldn't pitch this as a dystopian movie, and it's, I don't know, man. I'd like to think we're itching closer to that general strike. I want to say we are with people just like
Ron,
saying,
you got everybody in the squad saying Joe Biden is getting an A. Who the fuck is going to go on strike when every single progressive who's in public is saying Joe Biden is fantastic? You need those people
you
to
can't
lead
count on
it.
the people in office. I mean, you never could. It's never been that way. It never will be. You can't count. I mean, it's up to the people. It really is. And I don't know all the ins and outs of orchestrating such a thing. Like I've said many times on this show, I wish we had our Eugene Debs. I wish we had our Lucy Parsons. I wish we had our Emma Goldmans. I hope those folks are out there. But I'd like to think with folks like not going in, with people standing up and saying we're not going to come in and risk our health for these ridiculous wages, I'd like to think we're getting closer. I hope so.
We have those people. Ralph Nader, look what they did to him. Look what they do to anybody who actually stands up. Like, look what they did to Ralph. Bernie Sanders hasn't returned his fucking phone call for 20 years. That's and you go to Bernie Sanders' office, he has a picture, he has a Eugene Debs, and it's just like, you disgust me. Take that fucking picture down off your office. You're such a pretender, Bernie. You're such a cuck pretender. Ugh. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.